Welcome back, everyone, to another installment of eXhuming the X-Files here on the Outpost Unknown YouTube channel. My name is Matthew. Joining me once again is Jeremy.
Hey, everybody.
Now, tonight we're coming back from the dead and we're going to talk Lazarus, episode 15 of the X-Files. David Nutter is back in the director's chair. Now, his two previous episodes were Ice and Beyond the Sea. So, those are high bars that he's going to try to jump here with this one. So, does this one stand up to the quality of those? We shall see. As always, I will turn it over to you, Jeremy. Lead us through Lazarus. What's this one all about?
It starts out with Scully being brought in on a sting operation for a bank heist. They know that they're going, or these bank people that have knocked over a handful of banks are going to be at this one at this time. They need as many agents as they can get running around the bank in order to stop them. There's this really blatant foreshadowing at the beginning where Scully is talking to this agent about, you know, was it almost like I'm gonna retire in 1 week? I'm just gonna neck these kids. And
Yeah,
it's like, no.
well, he's so focused on this one dude. Like, he's been obsessed with this case, and he's very, very impatient as they're doing the stakeout and waiting for everything to happen. And Scully's trying to be calm, and she's trying to. We find out that they have had a previous relationship, and so she's trying to calm him down. But yeah, she's worried that he's going to blow the case here.
And so, sure enough, 5 minutes before closing of the business, and they note that like these people haven't shown up, and it's 5 minutes until closing. Like they'll show up.
Yeah.
Fully expecting, dude walks in with a shotgun and a ski or a hockey mask on, starts robbing the place. Scully and this other guy, other FBI agent, pop out with like out of cover, standing in an open floor against a guy with a shotgun. Like they could have been deep in cover and should have been. And I'm imagining there probably
Yeah.
should have been like 8 other fucking agents there, but it's just
Yeah.
this.
It's
Um,
I do like the fact that we opened this episode with Scully not working with Mulder, and we got that in an episode early on where we've seen Mulder's history of some of his previous partners and Mulder working with other agents. I think this is the first time we've really seen Scully working a case where Mulder isn't present, which I thought was kind of cool. And again, Scully always happy to pull out that gun, and this time she actually gets to blow someone away with it.
yeah. There's a quick Mexican standoff. The FBI guy and the dude with the shotgun uh, start blasting at each other. FBI guy starts dying, and Scully finishes off the bank robber with her gun, and then they jump to the ER scene where they wheel both of these people into the ER. They're trying to save both of their lives simultaneously, and while the criminal is dying, uh, the FBI agent also flatlines, but because Scully is not only an FBI agent but also a physician, she starts screaming at the ER people that are fixing to give up on this guy to hit him with more juice on the paddles and stick him with some adrenaline and then do it again. And I'm like, where's the attending physician that this chick in street clothes just came in and started barking orders at the fucking ER people? I'm sure there's a lawsuit in that waiting to happen.
Yeah, and she all she says is, "I'm a doc. Don't worry, I'm a doctor."
Yeah,
They don't ask for her credentials. They don't ask for anything. They just
they
do
just
what
do it.
they just do what she says.
And then they're shocking this dude back to life. But what's weird is every time they hit him with the paddles, not only does the FBI agent chest jerk, so does the guy, the criminal who's laying or dead, laying on a or underneath a blood-soaked sheet. So they imply that they're both getting jolted back to life at the same time. But what happens is that the FBI agent lives with the soul or mind or whatever of the criminal that
Yeah.
ends up inhabiting his body.
And then we got a fish out of water episode. As the criminal tries to sort of pose as this FBI agent. Now, this FBI agent, I think his name is Jack Willis. We kind of find out later on in this episode that, and I actually wrote this down because I was doing some math here, and I'm going to run this by you. So we find out that Scully used to be in a relationship with this guy. Now, this guy is much older than she is, and she says her birthday is February 23rd. In season 2, I looked it up. It's confirmed 1964 is when Scully is born. So that would make her character in the X Files just about 30 years old if we're going by the air date of the episode. She's like 2 weeks away from being 30 years old. Now, if you want to like go to the F, because she says, "Hey, I hooked up with this guy. He was my instructor at the
Yeah.
academy, the FBI academy." Okay. Already we're breaking lots of rules there. So she says, or I looked up the FBI academy. If you want to do it, it's 5 months long. Agents live on campus in Quantico. And we've heard Scully mention, "Hey, the academy in Quantico." You cannot be an FBI agent until you're 23 years old. So that in the show would mean that Scully has been an agent with the FBI for maybe 6 or 7 years before she partners up with Mulder. And Gillian Anderson herself was 25 when she filmed this episode. So she's actually playing a 30-year-old time frame. Now, later on in a subsequent episode we're going to talk about, Mulder talks about when he left Quantico, he said he was 28 years old. So they're getting like the ages of all this stuff way out of whack. So yeah,
Yeah.
but this guy's significantly older than Scully. So which means Scully was banging her teacher while she was in the FBI academy at Quantico.
Well, I mean, he was hot, right?
Sure.
Right.
Scully has bad taste in men. I think that we can establish that after we just watched Gender Bender.
Oh,
Got,
right. Yeah.
got
The
some
raw
bad
sex
taste.
appeal of Graber. Yeah. All right. Well, okay. Yeah. So she's, what is it? They go, the guy gets out, or, well, he wakes up after he still has a shotgun wound, by the way, that we never really address at any point.
Yeah, he
Like,
starts
that was
bleeding.
almost bad enough to fucking kill him, and he almost immediately gets up, possessed by this other guy, goes down to the morgue, finds his body, realizes he can't take his own wedding ring off of his fat fucking finger of his dead body. So we go into this scene where he grabs some shears that autopsies are done with, and cuts off 3 fingers. They don't show that he cuts off 3 fingers, but he's like, you could have been neater than that, and just lopped off that one. But no, he cuts off 3 fingers just to get his ring back.
And we established in the opening prologue that this killer, or the bank robber slash killer, he's in the car with his girlfriend, and he like loves. Well, I guess that's his wife. Technically, wouldn't be his girlfriend if they're married, wedding ring. He loves his wife, and she's like the getaway driver. And he's talking about. He's like, "Baby, I love you so much. You know, this will be the last or final score or whatever, and I'm going to take you to Disney World or something after this." So that's the crutch of this whole episode. This guy loves his wife.
Yeah. And she's worse looking than that Amish girl from the previous episode, but we won't go there. Like, he has this.
It's not
Also, they
always
go out.
about looks, Jeremy. He just
No,
might love her for her mind.
yeah, right. She's got that good or something. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. He also has this terrible tattoo on his arm of
Mm.
what looks to be a dragon, but the only really detailed part of these are like Simpsons characters like feet drawn on the side of it. I have this note in my notes about the Simpsons dragon that was on his arm.
Yeah.
So he gets his ring back. He goes back to where they lived at, apparently, and he breaks in. He wraps his hand in a towel, smashes a window of their front door, lets himself in, and then immediately goes to their chimney where they would have had their money stashed at. And that bothered me for a minute. You got a money stash in your chimney, but you got to break into your own fucking house. Like, you don't have a key stashed somewhere outside, despite
Mm.
you thinking about these things.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't even thought about it.
But
So,
finds
yeah.
that the money is gone. You find out that it was about $100,000 that they've robbed so far, which apparently was really, really close to them retiring for the rest of their life. With, okay, yeah, that'll work in 2024. But they've also killed 7 people so far, not counting the FBI agent, for $100,000. And I thought not that seems like a lot of murder for such a small amount of money.
Yeah, I just looked it up. $100,000 in 1990 was worth 243,256. Not
Okay,
enough
so
to retire on.
right, but you can go to where we live and put a pretty decent chunk down on a house,
Oh, sure. Yeah.
get a
Yeah, she
job.
his wife seemed like the kind of person that wants to settle down.
Right. So we go from that terrible tattoo starting to, oh yeah, he reaches in the chimney too. He pulls his arm out having scratched it on something, and we realize that on this FBI agent, this terrible tattoo starts showing up on his arm instead.
Yep.
Never really explained. There doesn't seem to be anything supernatural in the episode, but that just
I don't
happens,
even
I guess.
I don't even think do Scully and Mulder ever even see that tattoo?
No, no.
Yeah, so it's almost like putting it in there because the writers assume that the audience is stupid and we wouldn't realize that the soul of the killer is the one in the inhabiting the body. So like just in case you didn't realize the tattoo. Huh?
Put
Huh?
away. Yeah, yeah. There's no. They didn't want to leave that room for doubt that they tried to
Yeah.
bring up later in the episode,
Yeah.
and
I
they do think their audience is stupid.
I do love the I don't know where it was in the scheme of things of how we're discussing this, but Mulder figures this out like immediately. He looks at the EKGs. He's like, "Look,
Oh
it's
yeah,
two heartbeats. Two men died. One came back."
immediately jumps to a wild conclusion
The question,
about their bodies switching places, and so much so, like Scully immediately, thankfully, starts calling him out on this stuff.
yes,
So they go see this like really cool biologist guy, and I swear there are times where Mulder just finds these people to back up whatever wild ass theory he has, because they're talking to this biologist and he's giving them facts about what death means and things of that nature,
yeah,
but then he goes into this story for no reason at all about some dude who had something similar happen to him in a bus accident where he was briefly inhabited by some person on the bus that was fucking his wife. Like he was inhabited by the soul of the cheater and realized that
yeah,
his wife was cheating on him and killed his wife or something like that. I'm like,
yeah,
what?
yeah, yeah.
This
And
is what we're using?
well, there's actually a line when Mulder is bringing up, hey, one person came back. The question's which one, and Scully actually says like, "Can you accept the possibility this isn't an X file?" Because Mulder throws in her face because she's a rightly skeptical. Anybody with a brain would be skeptical of this. Um, she's like, "Look, this can't possibly be real." And he's like, well, can't you accept the possibility that this would be? And she's like, can't you accept the possibility this isn't an X file? Because at this point it becomes a little bit of a running gag. Every single case they work is an X file. Mulder's got 4 or 5 X files. At some point he's had the time to research in depth to say, oh, by the way, this is an X file. This link's here, here, here. So I do like the fact that they are making Scully pushback, even though, of course, ultimately it is an X file because the show is called The X Files. It's good to have Scully rightfully be a skeptic in these situations.
I They also like actually find an X file with a history in most of these episodes,
Yep.
where he's just like, no matter how outlandish it is, it's like, well, back in 1963, this happened down in blah blah. We didn't get that at all this
No,
episode.
no. And it's
We
like,
just got
how long have the X Files been around? Like in 1950, what the FBI was creating X Files for these weird things? No, 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 they were not.
so they end or the guy doesn't find his girl, or this gal that he's in love with doesn't find the money, so goes to the only other place that he knows to go, and that's Lulu's brother's apartment. Forces his way in, finds him in bed with this ancient television set, like 1968 era television. And such a stupid scene where he sees like, yeah, I was just watching something about my sister on there, and he turns around and he starts like making out with the television set because this
Yeah.
awful picture of his wife shows up.
Yeah. Every time he sees his wife, man, he just goes googly eyed. Like
Uh,
this is the pinnacle of wifedom right here.
And he was a good actor too, so I could kind of believe it. But every time you look at the picture, you're like, nah.
I
So he
cannot suspend my disbelief, good sir.
he guns down Lulu's brother because he figures that Lulu's brother was the one who tipped off the FBI, and that's why they were waiting at the bank.
All two of them.
Yeah, both of them. So, what was it? Why do I have this? There was this weird thing. Like, you've seen a bunch of different FBI agents with their guns drawn, police forces, and they are all practicing what or trigger discipline. It's something we see, or showdown in movies nowadays, television shows, things of that. Meaning that you don't have your finger on the triggers, you're just running around with a gun in your hand.
Yep.
You should note that when you look at this taken over or inhabited X or FBI agent, he has his finger tight on the trigger the whole time he's running around.
Oh, I did not notice that.
It was just it was a little attention to detail thing that I thought was cute.
Okay.
And then he finds out where Lulu is, or gets a tip, and he's just gonna go bust Lulu. And apparently they don't arrange anything with anybody. They're just like, hey, you want to go with me, Scully? Go get this chick. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's just go run out. We'll have a burger and then go bust this chick. Okay.
Yeah. No
So-
paperwork, no anything. No one knows.
So they show up at this apartment a complex where apparently she is. It should be noted that they see her carrying laundry. She bolts. They both go after her. Scully draws first again.
Yeah, again, kicking ass in this show. She's the one that chases her down, gets her handcuffed. I mean, Scully.
Oh yeah, just
throws herself-
linebackers her across that room. Just this is the gal that got taken out in Eve with a gentle hip check to a carpeted floor, just knocked her out. But no, she sees this girl through like a sheet and just bowls her over and just like takes her down to a bed, flips her over, handcuffs her. FBI agent guy just tosses handcuffs on the bed next to him. I'm like, all right.
It's going to get freaky now.
And so he has to go through this whole bit where he has to convince that his wife that he's not the FBI agent, that he was, her husband who had died. She ends up believing him because they talk about what happened when you married me. Like what happened right off the bat? No.
After that.
And
yeah, to me, this is probably, I understand why they had to do it, but this to me was like the weakest part of this episode, because I understand that this scene is coming. This long I got to convince my wife that this is really me inside this body sort of thing. But this just seemed to me, it felt like it went on and on and on. And I'm like, I already know this. I know this information. Find a more creative way to relay this information that doesn't take as long, because I was just like, all right, okay, how long? 5 minutes we're going to discuss this? 5 minutes of the running time? Didn't like it.
It also, you had to stare at that chick for much longer, so I get it. I get it.
I did not say that.
But they're still all right. So they're in this gal's apartment, and they have Scully chained up to a radiator, and then like Mulder shows up at this building, at this specific apartment building where they ran down the girl in the laundry room. They go visit the same guy that owns the building, or the landlord or whatever, pointed out where they are, but they're not around, and they immediately leave. Like, it was so weird to me. They're in apartment 207 right now. Why don't you go check that apartment? But they leave. He's standing out front with this real awkward looking, and I need to point this out. I don't know if you've ever seen bum fights or ever heard of bum fights, but it was this thing back in the early 2000s, mid or 2000s, where a guy was just like going out on the street with a camera and paying homeless people to fight each other or do really gross things. It was really disturbing, and it was kind of a low point on the internet. But Dr. Phil brings this dude on it from bum fights on his show, and the guy shows up on Dr. Phil's show with the top of his head shaved like Dr. Phil, a bad thick mustache like Dr. Phil, and kind of subdued suit. Like they're wearing the same suit. And Dr. Phil sees him, gets immediately pissed off, and throws him off his show. And all he was trying to show was that, like, I am no different than you are. I'm just here to exploit people just like you are. And that's true. That's how
Exploit for
Dr.
money.
Phil.
Yeah.
But anyway, this FBI agent looks not like Dr. Phil, but like this bum fights guy that's dressed up like Dr. Phil. And every time I see him, I'm like, bum fights. I can't get it out of my mind.
Oh.
So they or Mulder starts taking charge. They figure out where they're going to go in order to bust these people. Mulder shows some vulnerability when they're going to, they figure out that, or due to a ransom call, that there's a plane airport runway somewhere nearby. So they figure out that they have enough agents to canvass an entire neighborhood, going door to door to door to door in 3 hours time. I don't believe that that's possible in real life,
Nope.
but they did it
Not
anyway.
at all.
And or like, they're getting their briefing at the beginning, and Mulder walks in and he has this vulnerable moment where he says something to the effect that there's one of my people out there, so let's do this by the book. Let's do this right.
Yeah, I love this scene because right before Mulder walks in, it shows like completely different special agents of the FBI. We've never seen them before, but he's talking to Bumfights guy, and he's like, "What do you mean Mulder's working this like spooky Mulder?" And he says like, "What on aliens or the Kennedy assassination?" Like again, this is just emphasizing Mulder's kind of like a joke. Like everyone seems to know who Mulder is, and coming from someone who does work in sort of this realm, this is absolutely true. Like once you establish a reputation, that follows everywhere. Like it spreads like wildfire all around, whether it's a good reputation or a bad reputation. And so I like this little moment where these agents are sort of making fun of Mulder before he even comes into the room. And again, you nailed it. That sort of vulnerability, because I actually wrote it down. Mulder says like, "This one's important to me, so let's do it by the book." And it's cool to see Mulder running a task force and sort of successfully leading all of these people, because we always see him as the loner. It's just
Sure.
kind of him in his basement office. Scully tags along. People take pot shots at him, but in this episode, we actually get to see him lead a group of people and show that he is actually a really good leader as well.
Sure. I mean, they all stood at attention as soon as he came in the room and were taking him extremely seriously, and
Yeah.
they ended up finding the house that these people were at. They ended up immediately having, snipers in multiple locations. Like nobody was getting out of this. They were going to get their person back. So that was kind of cool. Then
Yeah.
they go inside. You find out that the FBI guy has diabetes and he hasn't taken insulin in a while, and it's affecting the guy because he's going into comatose because of it.
Yeah, he drank like a 12 pack of Pepsi or something.
Yeah,
and,
right.
and I will say, Scully, Gillian Anderson's acting is awesome in this part. When she's handcuffed to this sort of heater on the wall, she really emotes, because we said, we established they had a relationship for a year. Like you
Sure.
can tell they really care for each other. And as soon as she realized he's diabetic and this killer is essentially taken as much candy as he was essentially snorting it up his nose, Scully, she gets really freaked out. And I thought the acting there with her, because all she's doing is she's basically just sitting on the floor. And for an actor, that's very difficult to make it interesting when you're just kind of like handcuffed to the wall essentially. And she really pulled it off. So kudos to Gillian Anderson. Another great acting moment for her in the show.
And she doesn't believe that this dude is a killer. She believes that it's
Right.
still this guy that she had a relationship with, that she still cared for,
Yeah.
and she's trying to snap him out of it, but it never comes around.
Yeah.
So, they rob a drugstore. They get the insulin right as Scully is about to stick him with the insulin. Lulu
Twisty twist.
steps in and says, "No, no, you're gonna die from this lack of insulin thing, because that was always my intention."
Yeah.
I wanted you to die, or I gave you up to the FBI. I just drove the car away as soon as you got out to rob that bank
Yeah.
because I just wanted to take the money and run.
And the actor was really good. I mean, the hurt in his face, because the previous actor
Oh yeah,
was over the top with his like lovey-doveyness for this woman. It was borderline ridiculous. But the actor who was playing Jack, he really sold it. And so it sort of brought it back around. It's like, oh man, this is like the ultimate betrayal for this guy. Absolute betrayal.
and but the FBI finds him. The guy ends up tricking her into believing that he's dead, or I think it was some combination of something Scully said,
Yeah,
and so
Scully's like, he's dead, and she walks over to him and he
like
pulls the gun.
gloat.
He's like, I'm about dead, and we're gonna go to hell together or something.
Yeah,
Essentially,
and
he's like,
just pulls the trigger point blank range.
yep.
FBI busts in. Of course, Scully is okay. The dude is dead. The chick is dead. And that kind of brings the episode to a close. It was weird. It was another one of those episodes where that left Scully like self-reflective in what had happened and
Yeah,
coming around to the conclusion that what truth is really what real any real truth is kind of what you make of it.
yeah, because she says like, how am I supposed to? What am I supposed to think? How do I sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Like reconcile what has happened was because she does see him briefly, like because Jack is sort of up against the wall dying, and he leans forward, and it's the face of the actual original robber. And she is kind of taken aback by it, and then he leans back into the shadows, and it's Jack again. And yeah, she has this conversation with Mulder, and at the end, Mulder, he just kind of, she's like, "What does this all mean?" And he's like, "It means whatever you want it to mean," sort of thing. And then he just kind of walks away and lets her hand deal with it. So that's kind of how we end. Now, I actually like this episode quite a bit, and the reason why is this reminded me. Have you ever seen a movie called Body Parts with Jeff Fahey?
I want to say yes, but I
if
don't
if
know.
you if you haven't seen it, or it's been a long time, I recommend rewatching it. It's one of my favorite sort of B horror movies from the 1990s, and this involved a serial killer who was executed, but they gave all of his body parts to people who needed it. So, for example, Jeff Fahey, I think he was in like a car accident and he lost his arm, so he gets the arm of this executed serial killer. Brad Dourif, the great Brad Dourif, is in this. He's like an artist, right? And I don't know, he gets his eyeballs or something like that. There's another guy who gets the guy's legs and stuff. But the spirit of the serial killer is in all of these different body parts, and it starts, starts doing things like the body parts start controlling the actions. For example, like Jeff Fahey is banging his wife, and then he just like the hand of the serial killer starts grabbing her and choking her, to death and stuff. And she's like freaking the fuck out. Just weird stuff like that. I like the premise that this is kind of based on. That was a movie from 1991. So this was a few years after. So maybe this was also inspired by that in a way. But I like this, that sort of like your soul or your energy or essence or whatever you want to sort of describe it after you die could hop into a different body, and then sort of like what would that be like, and how would you act and whatnot. So I dug this episode quite a bit. What did you think of it?
I thought it was pretty good. Yeah, overall, the bum fights guy kind of took me out of it, and the wild jump or the wild jumping to conclusions about the body switching thing just so that we could have this story in this episode, that did kind of take me out of it because it's like, wow, this is the thinnest of threads holding this plot together.
Well, let me tell you. So in the episode's original plot, the Dupree, who was the bank robber, he was actually supposed to jump into Mulder's body. But there was a belief that at the time that neither Scully nor Mulder should directly experience such phenomena, and the Fox network, this is according to Wikipedia, the Fox network and the studio argued against the idea of using Mulder in such a way. And with more than a little reluctance, the producers agreed to make the change. And as writer Howard Gordon later recalled, he said, quote, "We'd wanted Mulder to experience the soul switch." What would you have felt if this had been Mulder that this sort of happened to? Would you have thought this episode would have been way cooler, or do you think that the Fox executives were right and to make it some other rando dude?
I don't know. This would have been a very Mulder centric episode, and we would have had to rely completely on his ability to act like two different people
Yeah.
throughout it. And I don't. I'll be honest with you. I love David Duchovny. I don't know that I've seen anything in this season at any point yet that tells me he could have pulled that off as well as the guy that did play the two souls part did. I don't think so.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it would have definitely been a challenge for his acting chops to see if he could do it. I'd like to see him do it. And again, I think it says in the sixth season there is an episode where Mulder sort of conscious swaps with another person. So we will eventually see this down the road. But Scully has gotten so many great moments throughout this first season to show her acting chops, and it feels like David Duchovny is kind of acting on pure charisma. He's not bad by any means. He's like
No.
perfect for this role, but it's not a role that so far has required a lot of emotional investment. Now we'll get there when we deal with episodes involving his sister and things of that nature, where we will spotlight his ability a little bit more. But I thought that was kind of interesting that they wanted to do that initially, but were sort of shut down. Other facts: this is the first episode which Mulder and Scully do not appear in scenes together after the teaser. So in every episode before this, there's either Mulder, Scully, or both are in every single scene after the opening prologue. And this was the first one episode in which that did not happen, as you follow Jack and going around trying to find his woman and all of that. It's also the first time Scully kills someone with her firearm because she shoots him dead in the opening prologue. The bank heist was shot in a real bank. Preparations for filming took twice as long as usual, as it was a run up to Christmas and the area was filled with Christmas shoppers. A lot of them dispersed rather quickly. However, when the filming actually took place, many mistook it for a real bank robbery, with most of them running away. I thought that was a funny tidbit. And series creator Chris Carter was very pleased with this episode, stating that it was, quote, a very good and well acted episode. I like it because it actually seemed too real to me. It played less as a paranormal science fiction show than as whether or not something could really happen. The entire cast was wonderful. Overall, this was a terrific episode, unquote. So, yeah, I mean, I think this is a cool episode, and definitely worth checking out. I think that you kind of need to have that sort of background of some of the previous episodes, sort of going into this. I think if I were to, I wouldn't just recommend this to somebody who was new to the X Files, and it wouldn't be one of those episodes I'd put high and say, check this one out first. This will get you on board the show because I think it's a little more drama y and whatnot. But yeah, I like this. Anything else that you wanted to say about this episode?
Yeah. Just an observation about the Scully arc of things, and I was this had actually gotten brought up by my wife, and I started thinking about this not only before but after and subsequent seasons. That the things that influence Scully to maybe cross over into believing as Mulder does almost always involve somebody that she loves. So far in
Oh,
this season, it was her dad, and now with this, former flame FBI agent, when she's just stuck at the end of the episode and she's just right on that border of maybe is a bunch of weird shit that I could just take as at face value for reality. It's all because somebody she cares about is in there.
interesting. Yeah, that's a cool observation. For sure. Now I'm going to be thinking about that as I go forward, looking at some of the next episodes coming up. But excellent observation. And that about wraps up this episode of Exhuming the X Files. Next week, we are going to talk about Young at Heart. We're going to get our salamander hands flapping around. And this is an episode written by Chris Carter. He's been very hit or miss. So we will check out Young at Heart next week and see if Chris Carter is back on the awesome episode bandwagon, or if he is sort of if he's lost all creative control. So see you then.